So the first ISTE standard that we have is for teachers, modeling digital age, work, and learning. The one that kind of hit home to me was when it said to communicate relevant information and ideas effectively to students. If you model what it is that you're looking for, they're more likely to produce that product. And then it's talking about where it says model and facilitate at the bottom. For me, this year, I implemented using Screencast-O-Matic to do my weekly updates to parents. Instead of sending them emails or newsletters, I did a video so I could show them exactly what it was that was coming home. And it helped for the kids, too, because then they were able to watch the video and say, oh, this is the sheet that I have, and pull it out of their backpack. So just integrating that technology and showing them what it was.
The article that I read this week was the 2017 libraries. In the article, and it was really cool. Almost the entire article focused a lot on open access and sharing information between different academic libraries and universities and sharing research. So, I mean, looking at the point A was demonstrate fluency in technology systems and transfer of the knowledge. I mean, that's basically what the whole article was hitting home on, was just creating that open access to share work with each other.
Talking about talking about the collaboration and the open space makes me think of point B with using the different digital tools. And I read the 2017 Higher Ed, and it talked a lot about that, just the different environments that you can use, Google Sheets, all of the Google tools, all the collaborative wikis that you can make. And I see that even in our classroom, that trend that's spreading. And so I think it's pretty powerful to help with that research and create new and innovative ways of thinking.
Yeah, I read the same report, and I want to focus on point D down here, modeling and facilitating effective use of current digital tools. The section on blended learning in particular was talking about how far we've advanced from there used to be a big separation between e-learning and classroom or ILT type learning, and now that's pretty much disappearing, and we're doing lots of blended learning. And so there's an assumption of digital aged work and learning in that movement. So I think that's reflected in the higher ed reports as well.
Okay, so talking about the creative communicator, one thing that my article kind of highlighted was how the universities are really looking at how they can help facilitate this. And so I read about the University of Malaysia, who did a study on the innovative learning environment and how it affected student behavior. In terms of behavior, talking about like the teamwork and the support and the motivation and how that kind of fostered the curiosity and creativity of the students. So I think it's interesting that campuses are starting to look at, well, how does being a creative communicator and how does using innovation affect the student outcomes?
Yeah, definitely. In this article that I read, it talks about, like making sure that they feel comfortable with whatever they're choosing, and that helps with student choice, because if they choose something that's interesting to them or choose something that they're more comfortable with, they're more likely to produce a better product. So it just kind of talks about, like the 6A where it says to choose the appropriate platforms and tools for meeting the desired objectives, just giving students an opportunity to explore different things, different hardwares. And, on here it talks about virtual reality and 3D displays, and it says that it's becoming more mainstream, especially the video games, like what we were talking about last week with the coding.
I know in my article, they talked a lot about libraries are really pushing for something called digital scholarships, where they're pushing for more digital creation in the library, for their research systems. So, libraries, part of the article was talking about libraries are kind of dying off on their funding from the government. And the biggest way for them to be able to revitalize the funding is through pushing new creation of new technology and using new technology to be able to find a way to adapt and survive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so kind of somewhat related to that is the idea of physical space, right? And the library used to be a completely physical institution. In the high ed report, there's a whole section on redesigning learning spaces that Brianna was talking about a moment ago. And one of the things they're talking about doing to sort of revitalize campus institutions is installing lots of video conferencing stuff. And, for students to be able to become facile and capable at communicating with one another and reaching through the screen and being able to collaborate across, thousands of miles of distance and even language barriers is a big deal.
So for this standard, it was about global collaboration. So students using digital tools to broaden their perspectives and enrich their learning by collaborating with others, working efficiently in teams locally and globally. In my article for the library NMC article, it talked a lot about universities just working together and putting aside, their own research, but looking to help each other with the research. What they said on there was that they really want to focus, again, on the universities coming together to help each other with digital research and creating brand new technologies together.
John, talking about the different types of exposures, not just to different universities and learning institutions, one thing that the Higher Education 2017 report talked about was the exposure just to different people and situations. For example, we have different professions and different expertise and different experience levels and different skills, and we're all able to communicate through telepresence. So, it's a pretty powerful what you're able to do with this technology.
Another thing to kind of hit back on what we talked about last week is the kind of 7B where it says students use collaborative technologies to work with others, including peers. This makes me think of the e-portfolios. And then the other program that we talked about was the Think Circa, which is the web-based program, just because it does give you the opportunity to work in that collaborative setting.
In the higher ed report, I think the biggest support of that is in the idea of group work, really having small teams confronted with either a real life challenge or a simulated life challenge and having them overcome it and use technology to do it. So I think the standard is definitely applicable here. Okay, so the next standard to talk about is the ISTE standard for coaches, and this is digital age learning environments, and essentially letting coaches demonstrate a digital age learning environment. Again, just like last discussion, the higher ed report really didn't have a whole lot in it that referred to the role of coaches. So that may be, I don't know why, it may be that the K-12 environment has more of a focus on coaches just from an organizational and human resources standpoint.
This kind of reminds me of the first slide when we were talking about digital learning from the teacher's perspective to the students. But as far as in the article, it doesn't really talk so much about how an administrator or a coach, for that matter, would implement it towards their teachers. So teachers teaching teachers, it really doesn't talk about that.
Yeah, again, like mine was the same thing. It's just about, more collaborative work, building environments where researchers can work together. Mine was more of a focus on how libraries can push information together to work together.
Yeah, and in my article, I found the same thing. It doesn't really talk about the coach's role. It talks about the need for innovation and how innovation can drive education, but it just doesn't talk about the coaching aspect of it.
Right.
So for this standard, this one for the administrators is talking about digital age learning culture. So creating a culture within your school that can push digital learning and digital age. For me, this one, it made me think back more to the articles we had for the last unit with creating new standards and things for technology. In the library, their biggest focus was talking a lot about, again, collaborating with each other, but also pushing for big data storage on a focus on creating and revitalizing the way we do digital storage, because digital storage is such a big issue right now for libraries.
I think this one is just having, making it available to the students and to the teachers, because there are so many things out there. Like you said, we've used up 80% of the storage, which means that there are tools out there that you can use. But the problem is that if they're not made available or even encouraged, for that matter, then they're not going to be something that's used.
Yeah, looking through the article from higher ed, there's a whole lot in there about policy and about institutionalization of this stuff. So I think that the higher ed article definitely supports this particular ISTE standard. A lot of organizations were described there. So for example, there's several organizations that just solely exist to help other institutions learn how to implement problem-based learning.
Yeah, Scott, that's a good point about the PBL, the project-based learning. I think just the fact that that's present in universities shows that the administration is already encouraging and promoting innovative teaching styles.
Right, and in my article, it also talks about like maker spaces and, engaging learners in that creative higher order problem solving, because they're doing hands-on things. and just having the ability to be creative and design and engineer their own things.
That about concludes our discussion. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Till next
Bye.
time.